Father, we thank you so much for this amazing ability with these outstanding leaders. God, you have called each one of them by name to serve you. There are times and seasons where things change, things shift, things are different. And as we kind of re-energize ourselves and coming, in the midst of the pandemic, kind of tunneling through to figure out what it looks like at the end, God, we're just going to talk about restoring momentum and what that looks like in our ministry, in our particular context, and how that just fits into a greater picture. And so we love you, Lord, and we thank you so much for being with us at this time and for sending us Trey to share. In your name we pray. Amen. So welcome to SMI, everybody. Take it away, Trey.
Thank you so much, Mike. Folks, I am Trey Wentz. I feel like Mike has already covered that part, but just to reiterate, also apparently is on my screen. I just a quick background, just because it feels like it's good to be human for a second. I now live in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma, as of about 6 or 9 months ago. This is where I grew up, but for the past decade, I've been living in Princeton, New Jersey, and working for the United Methodist Conference of Greater New Jersey. So I was a developer there. Basically, things that did not have like a typical box that they would fit into ended up on my desk. And so I got to help a lot of innovators create, do church planting for sure. But then a lot of times it was some sort of social good, some half business, half ministry kind of opportunity. And I got to help walk people through the process of launching that thing, of finding money to support that thing, helping them fundraise, helping them grow, which has been a ton of fun. And now, for the past couple of years, I have worked in this consulting world, and most of my work ends up being in a similar deal, which is kind of new frontier stuff. When there's not a clear path in place, usually that's my role, to walk with people and just create a process for launching something new that did not previously exist. So yeah, I moved to Oklahoma City during the pandemic because I feel like everybody needs to make a life change right in the middle of the pandemic, somewhere between like getting COVID bangs or moving across the country. And I went with moving across the country because that felt smart. And now we're living close to family. I got 2 little boys, 6 and 3. I've got a wife, Debbie, who mostly likes me. And I think you're caught up. I think that's all the things you could possibly need to know about me. But you are absolutely welcome to throw something in the chat. And as I hear it, Cam will be reading it to me in just a while. So are we good so far? Are we caught up? Do we feel okay? We feel loose? We feel, all right. So here's what we're talking about. We're talking about basically injecting a little energy into our ministry after a year of total lethargy, where every single thing that we have previously done that used to be easy and intuitive and just how we functioned was a total uphill climb for the past year or more, really. And we're facing, I'm just going to believe this in all of my optimism and faith, we are facing reopening and having a relatively, some version of normalcy in the next 6 to 8 months. And I think, and you can tell me if you disagree with this, our temptation is going to be to think that we can sort of step back into what was true a year ago. And the argument I would like to make is we have broken too many traditions and too many rhythms to think that we can just naturally step into something like that. And so it is our job to recognize what a heavy lift it's going to be to re-engage with folks in a way that is meaningful, in a way that basically resonates with our church. Does that feel true so far? I realize we're on mute and stuff like that, but you can at least give me the, all right. Okay. That's for me what feels at stake. That every time there's a transition, we have an opportunity to gain an audience with the people who have been put under our care, and we have an opportunity to lose an audience with the people who have been put under our care. And I actually think if we do this well, we can gain an audience. And we can gain rapport and we can gain trust as we re-engage with our youth or whoever it is that's been put under our care. And that's kind of what I want to talk about tonight. But first, I want to try a little something that we call the wagon wheel. And so we're going to throw you into very rapid fire breakout rooms. You're going to have a grand total of 60 seconds. So basically, when we throw you into the breakout room, we'll immediately hit the button that invites you to come back from the breakout room, because I think that starts a 60-second clock. So that's how long you're going to have total. You're going to be paired up with one other group or one other person. I've done the math. That breaks down to 30 seconds each. I can put it in the chat box if you need help. And I'm going to ask you one question, and you all are just going to answer it as fast as you can and go to the next one. Then you'll come back here. I'll give you a new question. You'll go back, and it'll just kind of be rapid fire. Each time, however, you're going to answer two questions the same. And it goes like this. Hi, my name is, and you will say your name. And then you're going to say, and I am at thus and such church. So I would say, hi, my name is Trey Wentz, and I am at Kingston United Methodist Church. And then you'll answer the question. Do we feel good so far? This feels doable. I feel like we can handle this. Okay. So your first question, your first round. Hi, my name is, and I serve at thus and such church. The question is, how would you describe the energy and enthusiasm levels at your church over the past 6 to 9 months? How would you describe the energy and enthusiasm levels at your church over the past 6 to 9 months? We feel good? Ryan, I see you're stretched. You got the swimmer stretch. You feel good? Okay. We'll send you to breakout rooms now. Hop into whatever you get invited to, and here we go. Soon. There we are. Never happens. I'm so surprised. That's kind of the name of the game with the wagon wheel is it forces you not to like deliberate on every word and just say stuff, which sometimes is dangerous, but otherwise it could be kind of helpful. Okay, here's your next question. Next round. What's your name? What church you serving? Question is, describe a meaningful rite of passage you experienced as a young person or adult. Describe a meaningful rite of passage that you experienced as a young person or as an adult. On your mark, get set, go.
Is it supposed to just like pop up on the screen? Because we haven't
Should,
got
but if-
anything to break out.
Interesting. If for some reason, sometimes, you know, down at the bottom where it says like share screen, record, sometimes it says something about breakout rooms and you can check there.
Mhm.
We got nothing.
We're back.
Welcome back, everybody. Welcome back.
Here we are.
Some of you, I don't know how technology is working for us, but we're going to plow on. We got one more round.
All right. Ready to
One
play.
more round. Be strong.
Yeah.
Last one. Well, let me see here. Actually, let me ask you this, because I think I want to nix that question. So let me just ask the group. Somebody who's creative, who's done icebreakers with their youth, who knows how to create a question. What's our last question? Just speak up and you get to determine the last question we ask each other.
We're going home.
What's your favorite boy band?
Oh, it's beautiful. Okay. Name,
Is
church. Is it? I'll let you use the rest of your 30 seconds however you see fit.
Oh Lord. I've got too many favorite boy bands is my real problem.
Oh.
So true. You don't have to have posters on them on the wall.
BSB, NSYNC, 98 Degrees, O-Town. I mean, where do I start?
I like them.
So,
Okay, back in the
we
game.
didn't get into the discussion, but does Boys to Men count as a boy band?
No.
I feel they're like the
No.
original boy band, at least in my life.
Well, it depends on how old you are.
Yes.
It depends on how old you are.
Hey, Elbrus, you're probably the oldest one in the group, aren't you?
I don't know.
I bet
I
you
never
are.
claimed those things. Might be.
Mm-mm.
Hey, Kevin Trantham said the Beach Boys. I'm just saying. I don't know. If
Absolutely not. No, no, sir.
Well, I tell all youth that even though I'm a Christian minister, I'm a rocker from way back. And so,
Amen, brother.
if you came expecting something else, it just don't ask me to play the records because I would do.
Hey, Elbrus, were you into big hair bands or what?
Yeah. And then it leaves you after a while and you don't have any and you don't worry about it anymore.
That was my point. Okay, I'm gonna shut up now. Sorry.
Kevin Trantham's favorite boy
I gotta
band
be
was-
honest.
was Hanson.
Oh.
Let's just own it. Kevin, your favorite boy band is Hanson. Just own it.
Yeah, I like to have a few Hanson songs. Yeah.
I think it's impressive that you said a few because I know of one. I feel like most of the population knows of one, but they left their mark.
Yeah, they did. They did.
I gotta tell you all, I didn't know that the boy band thing was going to generate that kind of conversation, but I'm glad that's what we landed on. Well done. Well done. Okay, folks, the reality is this, like we said, I think for a lot of us, there are some sort of cultural norms. I mean, this has been true, obviously, for the past 20 years, but there have been some cultural norms in terms of just people's normal life rhythms that we have been able to rely on. And people, that is, a year is plenty of time to break those rhythms. Meanwhile, a lot of our tendency is going to be to think that, I would say essentially, we imagine sort of an energy or momentum giving event. And we think about trying to kind of draw a crowd. We want to get the whole group together. And of course that instinct, I mean, people like to be together, we're relational beings, that makes perfect sense. The problem is there's a chance that's going to be unreliable for a while. And I think that we're going to find if we put all of our eggs in that basket, we might be setting ourselves or our ministry or our youth up for a disappointment. And so what I want to talk to you tonight is about something. Has anybody ever read the book, Power of Moments? This is Chip and Dan Heath, who write sort of organizational leadership books. Does that ring a bell at all?
Yeah.
Okay, Elbrus knows. I got a feeling you know a lot of this. Just between hair bands and Chip and Dan Heath.
Probably so.
I feel like it might be your zone.
The kids love me.
I believe you. I want to give you a quick overview of what Power Moments is about. This is sort of your book report. The idea is this: essentially their claim is people will give, in terms of how they remember something or the importance they give to an experience, they will put inordinate weight on the highest parts of an experience or the lowest parts of an experience. The problem is we oftentimes sort of make our plans for the middle, for the average experience. Or we try to set ourselves up so that people don't have a terrible time. Things don't go terribly well. We try to make a rain plan so that in case it rains, we've got cover, we know what to do. We try to make sure we've prepped for if things go wrong. The problem is, and this is sort of their premise, rarely do we take the time to think about what could have made this an experience that was remarkable. And the example they give was a study that they did with families at Disney World. And they gave them these phones, and they sent these families to Disney World, and they would send them a text periodically throughout the day. And basically the text was how good a time you having on a scale of 0 to 10. And families would, it would depend. Like they, were waiting in line at It's a Small World in all the heat. And, they were probably having about a 4 out of a 10. They had just had lunch, and somebody had, maybe dropped their ice cream or something like that. They were having a 3 or 4 out of 10. They just got off of the log ride, and they were having an 8 out of 10. They just got off of Space Mountain. They were having an 8 out of 10. Oh, a princess just walked up and picked up my daughter, and we got a picture. We're having a 10 out of 10. Well, then they went back and surveyed. So basically what they did was average out a family's experience. All of the numbers they turned in, they gave an average. And let's say on average, it was a 6.5. Then they would come back 2 weeks later and ask them how good a time and experience they had when they were at Disney World. And without fail, their experience was much closer to their farthest outliers. So if something really, really terrible happened, my kid was on a jungle gym and broke their leg, the number they remember was closest to that. More often than not, their number was closest to the highest mark, because Disney's really good at creating what they call magical moments. And so when that princess walked up and picked up the kiddo, what they remembered was that. And so when they talk about the experience, that's what they talk about, not all the mundane stuff. I say all that to say this. We get to work with people in formational ways, with young people in formative moments. And a lot of our job, especially as we're about to reopen, is to see if we can't create moments that are remarkable, that are memorable, and that they can look back on and go, oh, that was something that mattered to me, my story, my faith. And what I will argue is, a lot of times that does not mean get everybody together for a huge event. A lot of times it's basically about breaking the script or surprising people in a way that they did not see coming. And it takes planning, but it does not have to be outrageously expensive. It does not have to be outrageously elaborate. It just takes some thought. I want to show you what I find to be a ridiculous video, but I'll just tell you a little bit about Donald. I worked in New Jersey. We ran this program where young adults who were oftentimes in seminary, we paired them together to lead churches that were small but not dying. And I hired Donald and paired him up with his partner, Zach, to lead a church. And you'll see the kid. He's already young, but he looked about 14. I didn't know how this was going to go because the average age in his church was probably about 80. I just didn't know how he was going to be able to lead them. But let me just show you a quick video of what Donald did. Are we seeing this okay before I press play? All right, here it goes.
Are you guys having sound? I'm not having sound.
You guys
I
aren't
got
hearing
no
sound,
sound.
are you? I am, what a rookie mistake, you all. What a rookie mistake. I'm so sorry. Let me see if I can do this again. We're going to try this one more time. Tell me if this is any better, and wave at me if it's not.
In the process of idea generation. You don't have to be the only one coming up with the ideas. Pastor Donald approached me with this idea that he wanted to buy a giraffe costume. Where are you going with this, is what I asked.
I remember one particular Sunday, Pastor Zach, was up in front of the pulpit, apologizing for, Pastor Don is going to be late. And then all of a sudden, here comes this big, tall fellow in a giraffe costume.
And then Donald, aka Gerald the generous giraffe, turns around.
That's kind of what happened.
I mean, I had never, ever seen anything like this in a church. It was just so comical and humorous, but the message got across.
I'd say that since Gerald the Generous Giraffe has made an appearance, there has been an increase in generous hearts that are willing to give.
It was not easy and affordable being a full-time student and serving two churches.
Here, I just need to be clear. In my training for Donald, never once did I instruct him to put on a giraffe costume. Off the record, I think it's a horrible idea. It was never my recommendation. But for whatever reason, Donald got it in his head that that would be useful. And it turned out it surprised people, and it opened a conversation about money, which is often a sticky situation, but especially was in this church. And somebody who was literally a third of the average age in that congregation led them to talk about finances by breaking the script and trying something new. And quite frankly, led them to a whole lot of sustainability they did not previously have. What I'm not necessarily suggesting is any animal costumes for your ministries. What I am saying is people who are willing to take the time to break the script and surprise people often find that they get an inordinate response. And I think that's what we are looking at as we begin to reopen. People who take the time to create some powerful moment for their youth are really what they're doing is creating a rite of passage that they're going to remember for a long time. I'll share one more because it was my own story. And that was when I was, like I said, I grew up in Oklahoma. I haven't been here for 20 years and I've just moved back, but I grew up here in central Oklahoma. And my church did a men's retreat. And I don't know what you all would imagine for a men's retreat 30 years ago in central Oklahoma. But I was basically picturing like, we were going to cook steaks and hunt things. I don't know. But it was like a father-son men's retreat. And my dad took me on the men's retreat. I was not super excited about going on the men's retreat, but it was basically, talking about being a faithful man. It was pretty run-of-the-mill retreat. But at the end, the speaker had all of the fathers line up in two lines facing each other. And he invited each father one by one to walk to the end of the line and call his son to walk through the line and join him. And I think it was like join him as a fellow man in Christ, and then give him this necklace like you would make at like camp, like leather and beads kind of stuff. And I got to tell you, I sat at the end with all the other like 10, 11, 12, 13-year-old boys and thought, please, Dad, don't embarrass me. This is the dumbest thing I've ever heard. And I just, I watched one by one, kids would get called, they'd call their names up and the kid would walk and all the men would clap and their dad would put a necklace and plastic bead over their head. And I would think, man, that sure is embarrassing. Can't wait till my turn. And I was dead last. And it gets to me. And I think, Dad, just say my name. Give me my plastic necklace. We'll be done with this and I will survive socially. It will be okay. And my dad walks to the end of the line. And I remember he stands there and he points. And I thought, none of the other dads pointed, Dad. You could have just said my name. But he points and he doesn't call me. I feel like we're close enough. I can tell you my full name because I go by Trey because I'm the third. My full name is William Earl Wentz III. And I don't know what your playground was like, but a name like that is rough on my playground. William Earl Wentz III. And my dad walked up and he points and he says, William Earl Wentz III, come and join me as a fellow man in Christ. And I don't know what happened, y'all, but he said, William Earl Wentz III. And I was so embarrassed and I was covering my face and I heard my name and I went, yeah. And I just start crying, like ugly cry, which is the only cry I know how to do. And he calls me and I start crying and I'm walking down and all the men are cheering for me. And he gives me this dumb necklace. And I'm not lying when I tell you, I kind of folded it up and put it on my arm up above my sleeve. And I wore it for years. It smelled terrible, but I wore it for years. And I have to tell you all something. That was a silly, on the outside, that was a silly rite of passage. But what happened was a bunch of grown-ups decided to create a scenario that would invite me into a new stage of my life, and it registered. And I have never forgotten that moment. As a matter of fact, like I said, when I moved, I was packing up my stuff, and you better believe I came across that necklace once again. And you better believe I'll probably do a ridiculous rite of passage and give it to my kid. Because when we put inordinate time or creativity into creating a moment, people remember that. That's what I want us to consider as we're looking over the next 6 months. I do not think we're going to be able to create a scenario that looked like a year and a half ago. I don't think we're going to be able to do that for a long time. But I do think we can create moments that kids can hang their hat on and go, that's when I remembered I was loved. That's when I was invited to be a teenager or a grown-up in faith. That's when I remembered I had somebody on my team. And that's what I want to invite you to talk about tonight. So I kind of want to go through some sort of possibilities on what this might look like, but let me take a breath, because you've just heard me say several words in a row, and just say, are there questions? Does this make sense? Are we tracking so far? What do you not believe? What do you want to hear more about? Any questions at all while I take a drink of water? Oh, and this might be a time to check the chat. What's the update on the Cam? Anything I need to know?
No major updates. We have some shout outs from Ryan Magoo. John Warren had to peace out for a praise band practice, and Gerald the giraffe, generous giraffe, created a moment.
It was a really strong recap. This can't be your first time, Cam. I'm really impressed with that. Okay, well, here, stop me whenever you want. Let me mention a few things just so it doesn't sound like I'm saying, so everybody go be overwhelmingly creative like you always get asked to be. I want to lay out some possibilities, and then we'll take some time to sort of think about it in our respective sort of breakout groups. Oh, Cam, you are such an Enneagram 3. Well done. So one is, like, this is, as I've worked with folks, these are things that have gotten sort of traction and don't usually take tons of work. Any sort of video message from older adults in the congregation. And these could be stories from when they were kids. They could be first date stories. They could be, or they can be life insights from our children's ministry, from our youngest folks. What advice do you have for your teenagers? And they'll send, at any time we can collect videos, messages, from a wildly different age group, that tends to register with youth, at least with the folks I've been working with. 2, award ceremonies that reward things that don't typically get awarded tend to register. It's really what it is a naming ceremony. We get to say, this is a thing I see in you, but we do it in a strange way. We do elaborate trophies, bowling trophies, whatever. But really what we're doing is creating a scenario where we're saying in youth, this is what I see in you. People remember it. People have something to take home. People have something to to look back on. 36 questions toward intimacy. Has anybody ever heard about this study? Does this ring a bell at all? Okay, I'm gonna actually show you really quickly some of these. That's not what I wanted to show you, though that is a lovely picture. Let me try again. It's not letting me share anything different. How interesting. I can fix that. Just hold tight. The 36 questions toward intimacy was a study that a psychologist named Art Aaron did years ago now. And I'm going to try one more time. How did it work that time? Did we do it? Okay, great. He starts pairing people together And he's created, and he had sort of a rationale for how he landed on these questions, but he's created a series of 36 questions. It takes about 45 minutes, and he paired people together and he just said, I'm going to invite you to ask each other these questions. And the results that happened are remarkable. People who've known each other for a while or people who have never met find themselves crying or laughing in a way you just don't do with a stranger, or so, you know, like, and, you know, depending on your context, some of these you might have to edit. Some of these you don't want your youth to ask. But the reality is it is not normal for people to be asked significant questions and then actually for people to wait and hear the answer. And so I can share this with you if it ends up being helpful. But what we have found is folks are not used to intimacy. Folks are not used to being asked questions of significance, and folks are not used to being listened to. Yes, Barb, I'll send a copy either at the end of this thing, I'll post it, or I'll send it to Mike to send out to everyone else. Events like that tend to register for folks. That's all. A couple more. One that we've had quite a bit of luck with lately is, and you know, this happens with small groups. It does depend on there being some sort of food delivery service in your area. But I've had a bunch of folks call a meeting, call a small group, and have ordered dessert for everybody. And it shows up to their door at 7 p.m. at the same time. Everybody gets a knock on the door, and everybody looks up and, oh my gosh, I got dessert. I don't know why that registers so much, but you would not believe the stories I have from people just feeling like, oh, we did a thing together. But in a time when it feels like we're very separate and you're stuck on Zoom like you are right now, that tends to be registering with folks. There are senior notebooks where we've collected pictures over the past 8 years that get delivered when people graduate. There are letter campaigns from adults in the church where we set it up where a letter lands in their mailbox, physical letter, every day of the week for 1 week. All of these things are not expensive. They don't take huge crowds. It just takes some creative energy. I wanted to, sorry, here I'm moving my notes around. Part of the reason, we talk about this at Ministry Architects is one of the things we've learned as we've worked with churches over the years is that ministries we talk about ministries in terms of 3 rents, meaning like we pay the rent, meaning like when you get your paycheck, one of the first things you've got to do is pay the rent. All the other stuff you can figure out, but you need to pay the rent. And in any ministry, there are 3 rents that we talk about that if they are not paid, it basically undermines all the other ministry you might want to do. And those 3 rents are, we talk about it in terms of programs and people and enthusiasm. Programs, people, and enthusiasm. They're all a little bit fuzzy, and so we have to be on, like, we've got to be honest with ourselves in our respective ministries, but it basically goes like this. If the programs are running in such a way that people feel proud or satisfied with how things are running, and that's going to look different in any church, people are more willing to sort of give us the benefit of the doubt, to try new things, to invest in the ministry. If people have a fuzzy expectation about what programs should look like and those are not being met, they will undermine everything you want to do in your ministry. It's just human behavior. And so one of our jobs is to find out what programs, what feels satisfying to our church in terms of programs, or to be clear about what sort of programming we're going to offer. The problem is, for the past year, our programs have been off kilter. And we know that almost every church is not paying the rent in terms of programs. 2 is people. And that is to say, just good old-fashioned numbers that we always get told not to talk about in church. The problem is our congregation has a number in their head that they think the church should be at. And people don't always tell you, which is frustrating, but the reality is they have a number they think the church should be at. If we don't talk about numbers, we will not know what, or if we don't set an expectation for what numbers ought to be, people are going to, and we're not hitting that whatever that number is that people have in their head, once again, they will drag their feet, They will throw in the brakes for our ministry. They will get in our way, and we won't know why. And it's because they just have this sort of vague frustration or disappointment with the kind of numbers that we're hitting. Once again, this year, basically every church in America is not hitting their numbers. That happens with a pandemic. The third is enthusiasm. This is the one that it feels like we have some say over. Our programs cannot be normal. Our numbers just aren't going to be what they used to be during a pandemic, but our enthusiasm is something that we can affect. And as we are going to open up over the next 6 to 8 months, this is something that we can basically proactively, strategically inject into our ministry. My guess is just about all of us are going to do some sort of fall launch. People are going to be dying to sort of reopen. It looks like our country is on the trajectory of feeling safe by then. There's going to be some kind of fall thing for most of us. We can try to start to build momentum in the fall when that kickoff happens, or we can do something between now and then that captures people's imagination, creates a power of moments, and sort of buys us a little trust to lead into that fall. That's a little bit of what I'm asking people to think about tonight. Is that clear? Does that make sense? Just sort of my argument for it. Okay. Let me ask you, y'all, before I send you into little breakout groups, can you handle me talking for about 3 more minutes about power moments? Is this okay? We okay? All right. I'm going to share with you one more screen here. These are the 4 categories of power of moments. And it's just a way to think about what you might do that, again, not a ton of money, not a huge crowd. It just breaks the script and surprises people. And they break it into, Chip and Dan Heath break it into 4 categories: moments of elevation, moments of pride, moments of insight, and moments of connection. Excuse me. Moments of elevation, I got to tell you, you can even see on this, on this little section, these are things that, well, it's elevation. These are things that create excitement, that make us feel joyful, that make us laugh, that surprise us. There's literally an example they shared called Joshie the giraffe. It wasn't Gerald the generous giraffe, but apparently giraffes seem to be a thing in this whole elevation category. I'm not sure what that's about. The second one is pride. This is what I talked about, doing ridiculous sort of award ceremonies. We are awarding people for things that often go unnoticed, that people get recognized. We make a little investment in making somebody feel special. We create a finish line that people usually ignore. But moments of pride are something people remember. Moments of insight oftentimes come with pain, quite frankly. And that is to say, when a mistake happens or something bad happens, rather than doing what is natural for a human, which is to want to get through it, moments of insight actually take the time to sit in it and to create the opportunity to learn from something that was painful. They're not nearly as fun, but it's often where we learn the most and change the most. And then moments of connection are oftentimes elaborate ways to make people feel. That would be the example of ordering dessert for everybody on your Zoom call, which, by the way, if y'all are waiting for that, I did not order y'all dessert. I just want to set that expectation right now. But that little thing creates a little connection and people feel like they did something or they were a part of something. Any old mission trip that you ever took youth on, that usually created something called, that psychologists called shared mythology. They've got a common story that other people don't have, and it creates a moment of connection. Now that is an expensive one and an elaborate one, but that is what's happening, is a moment of connection. So elevation, pride, insight, and connection. Any question on those, or do those make sort of rough sense? Okay.
Trey, are we also able to send that document?
Sure can. I'll send both of them. Matter of fact, I'll try to drop it in the chat when we go to breakout groups in just 1 second, if that's helpful.
Ed, I tell you what, Ed, if you'll put your email in the chat, if you'll send it to Ed, he can get it as fast as you send it to him out at the end of this meeting.
That's perfect. Yeah, when we go to breakout rooms, I'll send it to Ed and he'll get it right out. That'd be perfect. So let me just ask the group, and we'll try to do this as a group. We might need to break into smaller groups. What does it feel like your congregation or your youth ministry needs right now? Does it need elevation? Does it need pride? Does it need insight? Does it need connection? When you heard those four, what feels most needed in your scenario?
I'll go.
Lead on.
So we've been doing pretty good at connection. Because honestly, like we've been doing a lot of small group things, and so I feel like they're connecting really well. But I feel like the pride is I could thank them, and I could like, I don't know, they've just been so great during this whole process of like just resilience and like me telling them to pull up their mask so many times, and like yeah. All this stuff, they're fine with it. And so I feel like I could really, just hype them up more about how great and how awesome they are. So I think pride is something we could work on a little bit, that pride section of it. So yeah.
Good. Thanks, Maddie. Who else? What's your sense?
I'd have to say for mine, it would probably be elevation. We have good connectivity and everything. We've had some things go on with a few of my youth, some hard things that have gone on. So we've hit that insight area as well. But I think elevation, getting them pumped up. We've got something big in the works for this summer, but I don't think they're quite as pumped up as I'd like them to be about it. So I think we would probably need to hit on that elevation aspect, and I think that would also bring in more kids as well. So
that's good. Thank you very much. Who else? What's your sense?
Ours is insight. Me and Mike had a conversation just yesterday that with my group, they're all about the big events. They're all about getting pumped up and all of that good stuff and feeling connected to themselves. But it's that part where you're really trying to go, okay, now let's go deeper, that they go, I don't want to.
Yeah.
I've got a guy that I joke about it, but it's a reality. Every time we get to the Jesus part, he gets up and he has to go to the bathroom, and he comes back after the Bible study's over every week. And so I think that's the where we're at, looking for that insight part.
That's so good. And quite frankly, I think, as we get near the end of a pandemic, there's a lot to lament. There's a lot to just sort of put to bed. And lament, we have a whole book in our scriptures dedicated to this idea. And our particular branded church does not lament well. But if ever there was a time for community lament, I would say it's now. And it does, Ryan, I think, what you're talking about, it creates space for insight. And I don't know what an elaborate lament experience looks like, but I think we could be pretty creative. I think this is a time to sort of stop and name what we've lost, and see what sort of space that creates for insight. So yeah, I think there's something there. Anybody else? Okay, I want to try something really fast, and I'm going to need someone to be brave and give me however half-baked. If you're hearing all this stuff, if you've got an idea for some sort of power of moments idea, I'd love to hear you share it, because we're going to play a game called Yes And. Are you all familiar with Yes And? Pretty simple. It's if you're an improv actor, improv comedy, there's one rule, and it's you always do yes and. So whatever your improv partner does, they say, oh my gosh, it seems like I just found this ice cream, but it's pickle flavor. You're never you're never allowed to be like, that's not pickle, that's orange. You have to say, that is pickle flavor, but it seems like there's a hint of peach fuzz. I don't know. Like you can only add to it, yes, and. And I want to invite us to try this, and this might be a total failure because this is too big of a group. But does anybody have a half-baked idea for a power of moments in their own ministry that they want to throw out?
I can tell you one that we kind of accidentally fell into that has paid huge dividends.
Okay.
We started back in-person outdoor Bible study in August, right at the beginning of the school year. And just for the very first I'm a former teacher, so I really think warm-ups are really important. And just for the very first one, we were going to do highs and lows. If some people call that roses and thorns, right. Where you just say, what's the high point of your last week and what's been the low point of your last week. And I was going to do that for the one time, but they really took to it. And we have done it every single week since. And it has paid enormous dividends. So I started this job in January, right before the pandemic started. And them opening up to me and them opening up to each other in Bible study and about their own lives has significantly increased since we gave them an opportunity to kind of give an Instagram worthy, it's very selective what they're sharing, but there's an expectation and an opportunity to do some really just easy in sharing with also the intentionality of your life's not perfect. What's something, even if it's a minor inconvenience, what's something that bummed you out in the last week?
Right.
And it has actually been a game changer for us for sharing.
That's really, and honestly, that's really kind of what highs and lows. That's literally what we're describing. What's the highest moment of your week? What's the lowest moment of your week? Because we know it's on your mind anyway. Because that's that's perfect. Okay, Jeff, how do you feel about us playing yes and with that idea that already sort of exists? You good with that?
Go for it. Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to invite everybody else here to join in. So I'll give you the first yes and. Yes, we're going to do highs and lows. And each week, we're going to give the bummer award to the person who had the hardest time. What's up, somebody else? What you got? It doesn't have to be a good idea, just an idea.
Yes, and we're going to do highs and lows. We're going to give the bummer award. And we're also going to give the I need to try harder award to people that didn't try that hard that week.
Keep it going. What else? Yes, and?
Yes, and even as we give the bummer award, because I'm not doing that, I'm going to grandma's house and I'm bringing this, and this, and trying to remember what everybody else has said. But even as we give the bummer award, we will reach out to that student later on in the week to see how they are going with their struggle.
Come on. What else? Keep going. Two more.
Yes, and as we reach out to that person in the middle of the week, we will also encourage them to keep going with whatever they're going through.
I love it. I love it. One last one. Yes, and?
Cam, throw out yours from the chat, man.
Yes, and when we're doing highs and lows out of Buffalo.
Out of Buffalo?
Out of Buffalo. Your silly moment of the week.
I love it. A Buffalo.
That would actually work. That would have fit really good with my kids, actually.
Yo, this is the
and I like too the idea of adding, and I'll add just if you want to do something similar. I'm thinking about now also like you did something hard this week. My fiance, some of y'all may know my fiance. Elizabeth Henry. She works at Millsaps, in the chaplain's office there, and their office passes around a little T-ball looking trophy that says, you adulted this week.
That's so good. So good. Some idea like this. So I think we get sort of, we have the weekly rhythm that we're responsible for. And, Sunday comes every week, as it turns out. And, so does Wednesday or what, like these responsibilities keep rolling at us. And we forget to take one step back and go, is there something remarkable that I can hand these kids that they can hang their hat on this week? And remember, and what you all just described, like Jeff, all I can think of is, so let's say on Sunday I shared and I won the Bummer Award, which doesn't feel like much of a win. And then come, Tuesday morning, I get something at school. I get a popsicle at school and it says people who win the Bummer Award need a popsicle and remember somebody's thinking about them. And all of a sudden I have completely flipped the script for somebody who had a really hard time. And people remember that. And so I just think there's a ton of ministry to be done in these little cracks. And it's stuff that folks remember. So I appreciate you playing along. Here's what I want to invite you to do. We're just going to, everybody on their own, I'm going to invite you to take about 4 minutes and write down one power of moment that you can initiate in your ministry. 4 minutes is what you got. And then Ed is going to throw us into breakout groups. And Ed, if you can, I'd love for you to throw us into breakout rooms of 3. And in those breakout rooms, we're going to take turns sharing what our idea is and then playing a few rounds. I'll say at least 3 rounds of yes and we're just going to see what we come up with. But a lot of times we sort of joke around and then we stumble on brilliance. And I want to give some space for that. Does that make sense? 4 minutes, write your own idea, then we'll go to a breakout room. You good? On your mark and set, go.
We're supposed to be back.
We're still in the group.
Nope, you're back.
We're back. We're back.
Folks, welcome back.
And we're back.
And we're back. So if anybody's willing, I'd love to hear at least a couple what you landed on. And if you learned anything from playing yes and. Anybody want to share?
Well, we're going to add this to it. Up in Louisville, Mississippi, Hopewell, and Western United Methodist Church. Come July, God willing, we're going to do a community lament. We're just going to get out and do it.
Wow.
We've admitted we've lost so many people. And everybody wants to do something. And we said, let's have a walk. The first thing everyone said, we can't do it. Nobody will get out and just walk. But we're going to have the walk. And we get through with the walk, we're just going to have an open barbecue at the church and see what happens. But we're going to lament. It's not a fun walk. It's really to lament. We need to admit.
Yeah. My God. My God.
Thank you. Very much. There is much to lament. And to not take the time to name it, especially if you're a young person who is neurologically wired to feel harder than a grown adult does.
Yes. Lots of them, yeah.
That's a lot of stuff to just sort of stuff away. So yeah, that would be youth ministry.
And we've got them running around and we're saying, okay, we're just going to try.
Yeah.
Rather than come up with something to fix them, we're just going to let them know it's okay to lament.
That's well done. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Who else? What'd you share? What'd you come up with?
I'm going to jump in, and I didn't really share anything, so I'm actually sharing Madison's, which I hope is okay. But I guess it will be. But we talked a lot about the fact of Wednesday nights during the school year. You show up at Wednesday nights, but during the summer, it just kind of feels sometimes forced. And so that idea of creating other opportunities during the week to come together and doing different like tournaments and game times And we even talked about, I think actually sometime later on earlier in the month, I think Michael may have actually mentioned this, so he's going to get credit where credit's due. But just showing up on like a Tuesday and saying, hey, we're going to be at the Mexican restaurant on Tuesday. Just come and be, like, with no agenda, no nothing, just come, sit, be present. Let's just hang out together. And we kind of went through that idea of that oftentimes when we're talking about with teenagers especially, they need to have that moment of connection before they can have that in any other moment of going deeper or intuition or anything, to feel even comfortable. When we were talking earlier and Jeff was talking about highs and lows, I was like, if they don't feel connected in their community, they're not going to share that even. At least my kids aren't. So that forming those connections, coming out of a year that's been really tough, and if you've got a bigger, even if they were connected going in, some of them they've just kind of been dispersed due to COVID. So finding those connection points and those connection moments is kind of our conversation, how it circled around.
It's so good. I mean, you're dead on that. I mean, it's the deal. It was always true that, like, we've got to log hours together before we sort of pass this barrier of trust. That was always true. But after a year like this, we're at a real deficit. And for us not to sort of lead and create space where we've just, there was let me just tell you this. My father-in-law and mother-in-law wrote a book on marriage. How's that for pressure as you enter the family? They wrote a book on marriage. Don't screw this one up. One of the things they said in their book, because you better believe I read it, was that great relationships are built on 1 million meaningless conversations. And that's not to say that we're not to have conversations of substance. We are. But if we have not created the space where we just talk about nothing for a while, we will never have the relational capital to talk about something when the time comes. So Madison, Ryan, to create those spaces, I think it's huge. I think it's wise. Anybody else want to share what they came up with?
Okay, so this one, it's kind of silly, but it hits on the pride aspect. So I was a counselor at Camp Wesley Pines a couple summers ago, and we did something called the bet dollar. And what it is one person holds the bet dollar, and if someone says, well, I want the bet dollar, then you get to choose what bet they do. If they fulfill, finish the bet, then they get to sign, and now they're the bet holder, the holder of the dollar, whatever. So, and it just went through all the counselors. Some of us got it twice, but I think everybody got it at least once. And so, but have a supervised supervised bet dollars. The bet dollar can only pass hands on Wednesday night. What?
I just remembered something.
Okay. The bet dollar can only pass hands. Can only pass hands on Wednesday nights, and the bet has to be passed through me first. But that can be kind of like before we get into getting into our lesson and getting settled down, something fun that they look forward to, bring their friends for, and also the pride of getting to be the holder of the bet dollar and getting to sign their name. So I thought it's kind of silly, to think about, but I think it would be fun. I think my kids would love it. So
Isn't that when you had to eat a booger for the dollar?
I didn't do that one. I liked the rest of
No, what you're describing, of course. This is a proud moment. It's a proud moment. No, what you're describing, of course it's silly, of course it's a game, but what you're describing is, again, that term shared mythology. There's a thing that my tribe did, and I get it, and it was a part of who we are. Like, it's formative. And you do something like that on repeat, it becomes a part of the shared mythology, it becomes a part of who we are, and then folks feel like they belong. And so what was a silly bet dollar game was actually a symbol of belonging. And that matters. Okay, we're going to move toward close unless somebody has one they want to share. I don't want to rob you of this opportunity here. Okay. Friends, this is the idea. From lament, because this is a year of much loss, to a bet dollar that is so silly, except that it is formational and it sort of gives people a place to belong. all we're asking is to take a few, like a moment, and step out of the rhythm of the sort of weekly responsibilities and the stuff we do on repeat, and ask yourself, is there something we can do to create elevation, to create pride, to create insight, or to create connection that will be formative and that will create a moment that folks can remember and look back on and go, that was the moment I felt like I belonged. That was the moment I felt like somebody was in my corner. That was the moment I learned something about myself. That was the moment I knew that people were looking out for me. And if we can do something like that in the coming months, besides just being the right thing to do, I think we also set ourselves up to relaunch in the fall in a lot healthier way. If I could, I'd just like to sort of close this in prayer, but Mike, is that okay? And then I'll hand it to you, or well.
Yeah, that's perfect.
Good. Okay. Pray with me if you would. God, we admit that we individually are very, very outmatched with this responsibility that you have entrusted in us of leading your church, of leading your young people. We admit that they are facing decisions and loss and possibilities that are much more powerful than any of us. But we have the audacity to ask you for the wisdom and the creativity and the passion to lead them well and to help them navigate this life and to help give them moments that mark their path toward adulthood and toward you. And so give us an eye for the moments that you that we might get to create, that lead them forward, that make them feel loved, that make them feel safe, and that spur them on toward love and good deeds. We ask all of this in the name of your Son, Jesus the Christ. And everybody said,
Amen.
Friends, thank you all so much.
Hey, Trey, thank you. Everybody give a round of applause for Trey. we thank you for your time. Trey, I do want to ask you, on our third session of SMI, which is Student Ministry Initiative, is what we're doing, which is next month. We have Stephanie Cairo talking about how to reestablish small groups and things like that. Give me Stephanie, give us a word. Why should everybody come back and hear Stephanie next month?
Stephanie is definitely going to make a joke that she should never have made. I guarantee you that. And Stephanie continues to just be like, she's a brilliant mind that's been doing this forever and keeps coming up with brand new stuff that just sort of blows my mind. When I first came on with Architect, she was one of the first people I trained under, and she just gets it. So she's worth listening to.
Yeah, and she is the master of small church and small group ministry. She's written multiple books. She is the guru. So we are lucky to have her come in, as we've been lucky to have Mark and Trey join us. So I want you all to join back in because and put your, we kind of talked about today, just kind of re-energizing how do we get, and I think some of the things Trey said with the foundational work that we can do now doesn't have to wait till we can do a fall kickoff or a summer thing. There's so much stuff that we can invest in now to get the ball moving down the field for that to be established. So I encourage you to take that. Also, we'll wrap this up a little bit too on our Zoom, our next Zoom meeting, which we'll meet in a couple of weeks. I'll send that out. If you are on our youth conference, youth leaders Zoom meeting, send me a text and I'll get you in our group and we'll send you an invite and you can come hang out with us. It's a lot of fun. Me and Michael like to hang out there. We're regulars. We're regulars at the Starbucks Zoom counter, I guess. So y'all join us, as to where multiple people in this group are too. But he's just the picture I saw. So, but yeah, join us. Come hang out with us and be with us with Stephanie again. Thank you, Trey. Thank you, all of you, for coming. I want to say this because I don't get a chance to say it enough because I'm not with you enough. you guys are making the difference in communities and in kids' lives, and you're the superheroes. We just get to play a part with you, to talk with you and cheer you on. And so our role, which is what Trey did today, and what I want to do, is if I can be somebody encouraging you to put on your Superman outfit while you go back and, you know, leave your Clark Kent job to run in and do this, I'll just cheer you on and say, go get them, superhero. Because ultimately, the biggest disciple maker that the church has is you guys. You're it. Student ministry. I'll play that dollar bet game. Put my name on it. I guarantee you, more discipleship happens in student ministry. More foundational work and commitments to Christ happen, and from confirmation to finding a kid that's unconnected. So thank you for what you do. So we love you, and we will see you next time, everybody. Peace and love you all.